I just have two questions that I'd just like general comment on. The first is, I've been in law enforcement for 32 years. Maybe you all are your subject matter experts. I looked at the bill. I can't find anything in the bill that addresses criminals. I see a lot of provisions to address law-abiding citizens. I don't see anything that actually addresses criminals and their ability to acquire weapons. And the second question I have for the panel is, I heard Chief Johnson from Baltimore County say that in the process of applying the training standard, his people will, quote, weed people out of the program. And I'd like your comments on how you feel the government weeding people out of their Second Amendment rights is something that we should be doing or not doing.
I would like to address those questions. The purpose of this legislation, particularly the training requirements, is to stop straw purchases. That's the only rationale that the governor and the Attorney General have articulated. If you want to stop straw purchasers, the state has full means to do so. Since 1996, this state has kept track of the sale of every single regulated handgun or assault rifle. It's right there in the state statute in Public Safety Article 5-123D2. So if you find a gun on the scene of a crime in Maryland, and if it was sold in Maryland, you have a record of it, and you can trace where that gun came from. And if it's not in the hands of the original purchaser, you will be able to go to the original purchaser and find out how it was disposed of. If you want to stop straw purchasers, state law right now punishes very severely straw purchasers with 10 years in prison. Now, the state says we can't enforce that because the State Court of Appeals has said that the Court of Appeals decision in Child v. State required a mens rea. Well, it interpreted a state statute, 5-141, to do so. If you want, and that statute imposes a knowing requirement. If you want to get rid of the mens rea requirement, amend that statute to make it a strict liability crime. Or start developing resources precisely in the manner that the child court said you should do, and use circumstantial evidence to establish your case. Mens rea is a common criminal element, and every day it's proved in this state.
I'll go to
I'd like him to answer my second question, Mr. Chair.
I think
I wanted to have him answer the second part of that question, dealing with what the chief said about using this policy to weed people out in that training concept. How does that relate to what your interpretation is?
Delegate, I'll address that, and I also wanted to add something to your first question. I was sort of surprised to hear that comment about the instructors for the training course weeding people out if they believe that they are there to complete a straw purchase, because I don't see that addressed anywhere in the bill. And frankly, I would be concerned about, and I would imagine that the certified instructors behind me would agree that they would be concerned about doing so, removing someone from the class with or without the authority to do so. I'm not entirely certain how that is essentially supposed to take place. And moreover, we've heard testimony and evidence that when a firearms dealer suspects a straw purchase is taking place and they call law enforcement, nothing seems to be done. So why an instructor who suspects that a straw purchase is taking place would expect any better response, I'm not entirely certain. But also to your first question, Delegate, I would actually have to respectfully disagree with you. I think the bill does address criminals. The bill addresses creating entirely new sets of criminals out of people who, again, have no mens rea. They have no criminal intent. And they have managed to, for example, in House Bill 294, if a person is on deployment in Afghanistan, serving overseas, their personally owned firearms remain in Maryland, and they are physically unable to register their firearms within the prescribed period of time, they are now, in fact, a criminal. And they are, under House Bill 294, they are a criminal subject to 3 years imprisonment, which would trigger a federal ban on firearms ownership for their entire life. And yet, they have done nothing with criminal intent.
So you're saying the bill creates criminals, it doesn't address criminal actions right now?
Yes.
Thank you.
Delegate